do. Bella, come on. Bella, in. Come on.
Oh, sit.
No, she did. Give her out.
Ah, more likely to bark out there now. I've asked you, my beautiful husband, to chat with me today because, as you know, I've already done a video for Rehubs, which was with Rochelle, my best friend. The families out there suffer too, if not more sometimes. I think it's really important that we also let a new audience know of what you went through.
You always enjoy the social drink. You're always a fun, pleasant person to be around when you drink. I think it just all of a sudden, over probably a space of 6 to 7 months, that pleasantness disappeared. And then you could see that you were drinking an awful lot more. I didn't know what addiction was, so I wasn't like, oh my God, my wife's an addict. I was like, you're just drinking a lot. It never felt like you were an addict. It just was like you're drinking a bit more than normal, and then you became a bit more snappy, a bit more volatile, and not as pleasant to be around when you were drinking, but never felt like it was an issue.
When was that? What year do you kind of remember it as?
2017 and 18, around quite early. Like it wasn't any, as anything to do with the pandemic or lockdown. I remember.
No, it was before that.
After those kind of 7-9 months, when I realised you were drinking a bit more, and we discussed it. I think it was then I was surprised how quick it just took hold of you.
Right.
And then you really became hard to be around.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You can say
I'm going to be in trouble.
No, you're not going to be in trouble at all. No, you can tell it because I think what it is there's so many people that I've met through my journey of recovery, and especially recently, that those who are looking on at their addict brother, friend, daughter, wife, husband, think they're going insane, you know, and questioning their own sanity. You said to me, do you have any idea what it feels like living with an alcoholic? I'm pretty certain those were your exact words.
I think it was very aware I was living with an addict. Everything became a drama, and it becomes, I think the easiest way to describe living with an addict for me was, it was like being in a mental boxing match every day to be around you. It was just relentless, constant, argumentative, stress, drama. It brought out the badness in you, which was never the person you were. You always have and always are like a loving, fun-loving person. You're always my biggest fan when we started dating. And for a few years, you just became nasty and not nice. And that was hard to watch and be around. But it wasn't, for me, it was never you. It was just the drink was bringing out the badness in you. You cling on to the hope that you will change, and like you tell me, I'm going to stop drinking, you know, I'm going to be better. And that was enough for me to hold on to that hope of, oh cool, we've had the conversation, it's going to get better.
Yeah. And
then 3 months later, 6 months later, same conversation. I think it was hard to watch how it impacted your work.
Right.
Because you're someone who takes pride in how professional and how much you want to be great at your work, and that just then fed into the family life and all of us having to just see you struggling in every aspect of your life.
I obviously couldn't see what I was doing, and I thought that I needed a drink, and then I definitely needed a drink to get through anything, any audition, any meeting.
It was always drink. It was always like, we go to the cinema, you needed to bring a bit of vodka in to have your, was it slushy?
Yeah.
You'd add a bit of vodka into your slushy because that's what you believe people did. As somebody who wasn't in addiction, it's very hard to address it because you're like, I just don't want another argument. Like, it was just relentless of like, sure, you're having another drink, we might be going out for something or going somewhere with the kids, you're having just a glass of wine before you go, and it's like, I don't want to address it again. All I wanted to do was ever just shake you and say, stop, you're making life hard for everybody around you, and us in particular, the kids and me. And the first 3 to 4 years, you were probably a little bit oblivious to how much of a whirlwind we were all involved in, and it wasn't very pleasant to be around.
You deal with little things in the most silliest of way, and you can't deal with little things that happen, and then you get all anxious and you're all like, I need to do this, I need to do this. But when it comes to the big things in life, you just cut off. And I feel like the way that you got through a lot of it, quote me if I'm wrong, is that you had to separate what I was bringing to you and the family in order to survive for the family.
I didn't know anything about addiction. I didn't know anything about would it ever end. I didn't know would you ever get help. I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. Was it going to be that we'd have to separate? Was it going to be that you'd end up dead? Was it going to be that you'd have to get sectioned? Like, I didn't know any outcome. It was just very much a case of I'm trying to just keep myself sane and see the wood from the trees. And I didn't know where to turn, who to talk to.
I know that when I was drinking a lot, I would always argue. Now looking back, I can see that was my way of drinking more, because I would separate from you and go up to the attic or go out to a pub or see my friends to drink more.
It gets to the point where I was getting it from every angle. Like, I couldn't turn any direction where I wasn't getting it from your friends, wasn't getting it from people at the school. It became a bit like it's now breaking me because I'm just getting dragged into this. I did the intervention, which didn't work, and that became the real breaking point for us as a family and as a couple, where it just became really hard to know where do we go from here. And like I said, I didn't know if you ever would change. That was the unnerving thing inside, that I had an issue where the person I loved, I didn't know if I'd ever get back.
I felt, honestly, that I had control. So these promises that I was promising you weren't me in my head going, I'm going to stop, ha ha ha, fool you. I know I've got an issue at this point and I really don't want to lose my family, but I don't want to go to rehab and I don't want to be labelled an addict.
Before we did the first intervention, you were really bad. That was actually harder for me. Because I think you were oblivious to how bad your drinking was. I think after we did the intervention, you hit it. You thought you hit it better, but I think at that stage I was probably a bit like, "Oh, this is really bad," because you rejected the intervention. Everybody then around you, and all your friends who cared, had pulled away, going, "We tried. We can't do any more." You were aware, so you made efforts to hide it a bit more, and then
Were you aware of me hiding?
Yeah, totally. Like, you could smell it off you all day, every day. Every time I'd open the dishwasher and I'd pick up a bottle, it just stunk of vodka. Like, it wasn't nice. You know, every time you go in the fridge, there'd be a water bottle there, and it's like, it's clearly vodka. Like, you'd never had water bottles in the fridge before. And you always, unfortunately, without hurting you, but like you smelled of alcohol. Like, it was just not pleasant at all. Having seen you go through the 12 steps and how much you've changed and how unbelievable that program is to take someone where you were to put you back to this kind of like straight and narrow, I guess. I was watching videos on YouTube when I was away at work in a hotel room. Like, that's how bad it got about like what is addiction, what is the impact of addiction on children. And I suppose that probably scared me a little bit, because you hear the horror stories on YouTube of like, oh, this can impact the kids and their brain and how their development and stuff. If I was talking to somebody now who came to me where we were 5-6 years ago, my advice would be very much, go talk to somebody that can give you an understanding of what's ahead of you. It is ahead of you, like, it doesn't just change overnight. And even when you got sober, like, you know, the first 6 months were tough.
Yeah.
We had to learn to get to know each other again, and where were those boundaries of things we could talk about?
Yeah.
Could I go and have a pop at you about how you really embarrassed me 2 years ago, and was that the right thing to do? And I found all that stuff really hard.
I think the way that you dealt with it was amazing, because, you know, what we were able to do was talk, and without that, you know, without that 28-day program, which obviously I went away for, and not everybody can. That's why Rehubs is obviously brings that element to people who can't do what I did. Not
knowing the outcome and not knowing where to turn was the hardest part, because I genuinely didn't know if we'd ever get to where we are now, and I didn't know who to talk to. Like, it's not exactly like I'd go to the gym and talk to my mates going, my wife's an alcoholic, any tips on what I should do?
Yeah.
I was effectively just trying to wing it and hold on to what we had as a family.
Horrible to hear back everything, and it's been almost 3 years, and I know we've moved on a lot. And whilst it's hurting us talking about it, it's helping so many other people that will watch this, because I know that when I talk to people, it might, you know, it might only help one person, but I know it'll help many. Of somebody in your position who have that loved one and they don't know what to do, and once they hear somebody that they can relate to, they know they're not alone. But this chat here will help more than that, you know, and I want to say thank you for doing this for me, because I know it's not easy.
Do you know where the coffee machine is?
I do, Hugh. There you go, you press the button. I'm going to make a cup of tea. You don't have caffeine past what time?
12.
12 o'clock.
Yeah.
You go get you. My cut-off's about 4.
That's why you don't sleep well.
I sleep very well now. I would never have a good sleep at all.
We were down here most of it.
Well, yeah. I know you laugh now, but I never came to bed with you.
Yeah. I'd come down to go to work or to the gym, and you'd be passed out on the couch or on the floor. It wasn't nice to experience. I think there was just hope constantly that you would change.
Yeah.
I don't know where that hope came from, because there was so much time when all the evidence was you were never going to change.
Right.
But I just kept holding on to the fact that you would change.
There's your coffee, baby.
Thank you.
I thought that going on a holiday would make things better if I had a little bit of abstinence from life.
You were horrible on holiday that year.
On that year.
Really horrible. Like, I think that was, when I say horrible, it's probably the wrong thing, as in, because it's always lovely to be on holiday with you. Me and the kids loved it, but as you drank throughout the day, that nasty side would come out, and you would always find a way to manipulate going somewhere to have a drink. It was all about just finding a way to drink, and we'd be in restaurants for 3-4 hours, just having a quick lunch.
Yeah.
Because then whenever I'd say no or we need to go, it would flare up into an argument.
And I'd find another way.
And you'd find another way to go and have a drink, or the whole day would be ruined for me and the kids, and we'd come home and you'd head off in anger.
It's hard because I am manipulative in addiction, and I'm not nice, and I will do what I have to do to get what I want.
You were always like had an excuse that this is what everybody does.
Yeah.
You don't get it, Hugh, because everybody drinks. You're not normal.
Yeah.
This is what everybody does, and that was a tough battle to understand. Is like, well, is this what everyone does?
Mhm.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't feel right, and I don't think it is.
Yeah. My memory serves me well. Is why we didn't get help that 2 years before. Is because
you were going into Panto, and you wouldn't take the 4 weeks out of life.
Right.
No childcare for the kids.
You're learning about rehabs as well more today with me being here.
Okay.
Is that it's not residential, and that's all online. It gives the facilitation for people who were in my predicament then that can't just leave the home environment, whether they're a single parent, they have a job that they have to keep doing, they can't just take time away, they don't have an understanding boss that will let them just go off to residential. And also the funds, residential is a lot more expensive, as we found out. But we didn't know that this was around then. And so us talking about it, and all of the videos that I'm doing for YouTube as presenting on behalf of rehabs, is getting the message out that there is other options, and that's not just cart yourself away for 28 days. You are able to get as good, if not better, attention, especially from the specialists here at rehabs. Around 7-8 out of the 10 people that I was in rehab with has unfortunately relapsed, and that usually happens within the first couple of weeks of being released, because they go back to either their abusive relationships or situations that in their home that they haven't been able to deal with, because alcohol was my coping mechanism. It's our solution. But with rehabs, you're taking the treatment online in your everyday life environment, so that's not such a shell shock when you get let out.
Yeah.
And you can continue that, because it's a continued program. After those 28 days, it doesn't just end then, and the support system was there. Interviewing Professor Mark Antonio, which was amazing. He was such a good, interesting character to interview, because his speciality is about addiction. He's been integral to creating the program and the aftercare program with rehabs, and finding those solutions and coping mechanisms, and teaching you when you're on the program how to deal with life as life shows up.
I think that was my biggest nervousness when you came out, was would you ever relapse, because you didn't know how to cope with anything.
Yeah.
Because for 5-6 years you numbed your coping. You couldn't deal with the kids' stress because you'd never had to cope with it, because you were always drinking.
Yeah.
I think that was my nervousness, was when you got into the real world and you were away from the facility, would you relapse because you'd no coping, you didn't know how to cope with things.
I was terrified of relapse. I still am. And I think that's not a shameful thing. Thanks, mate.
Hopefully you don't.
No, but I think I have to be terrified, otherwise I won't remember my coping mechanisms to cope with everyday life and stress.
An unpleasant thing to have to go through, unfortunately.
Love you.